So we just had Iran, launch these missiles. And what was it all about? Let me find the story. So essentially, though, I think it was on the 1st of this month, Israel attacked the consulate in Syria, the Iranian consulate in Syria, and they killed uh, like half a dozen or so folks, and some Zahar or something like this was the guy's Zahardi or something, commander from Iran. Which, what are you even thinking? Why would you go to Syria where Israel just kills with impunity? Why would you go there? You're barely safe in Iran. But I mean, just talk about the stupidity. So Israel attacks, well, in my opinion, because, they won't get condemned for it, celebrated for it, but not condemned for it. The consulate, which is obviously an act of war on both countries, and kills this Zahardi, Commander Zahardi or something, somebody who's important. And Iran says, well, we're going to strike back. We've had enough. We're going to fight back. Now, what is it? And you remember when we've talked about this so many times, I've said, why is Iran not going to declare war? Why aren't we going to see some? Iran would have to be forced into war. They would have, and I don't mean forced as in some sort of casus belli. I mean like an invasion. They would have to be forced. And why is that? Because their leadership wants to live, and they know there'll be no living. They know they'll be dug out of a hole like Saddam Hussein if they decide to go to war with Israel. And so all of these claims that you hear from Israelis, it's just all horseshit. Oh, Iran's about to try to take over the world. I mean, and I am after watching Fox yesterday, when this all, or from point that began, and watched it yesterday, dinner time, whatever it was, I am confident now that the CIA in the United States is totally controlled by Israel. These CIA agents that are interviewed forever, since going back as far as I can remember, seeing CIA agents, retired and active, interviewed, have always been a destroy all of Israel's enemies. They have always been that way. Maybe the problem with the CIA in the United States and the swamp is the fact that the CIA is controlled by a foreign country. I have no way of knowing this for sure, but I mean, you got to put two and two together. How many CIA agents have you seen saying, Israel, this isn't good for the United States? Never. I've never seen that. Every single time they say that any attack on Israel is an attack on the United States. Well, how is our Central Intelligence Agency, how is that the conclusion of their agents? And you notice the conversation about Israel, and this is the thing that is disgusting. The conversation about Israel is never, the verbiage and the way people talk about it is never the kind of conversation that is the ally conversation. It's never the kind of conversation that, in the verbiage and the sentence constructions, that you hear associated with our ally is in danger. The verbiage is always about how Israel is America. Any attack on Israel is an attack on the United States, and therefore the United States needs to go to war against. And you see it not just in the U.S. I mean, the UK was saying the same garbage right after the drones were launched. So anyhow, getting sidetracked. We'll get back to that. Anyhow, and I hope we've been able to bring some people around to the awareness that we're not on YouTube today. I hope you helped out with that. So Iran said that they were going to respond to this attack and the murder of Sahardi and the destruction of the consulate, Iranian consulate. And there was a division in Iran. There were hardliners who said, go for it. Massive attack, inflict serious damage on Israel. And then there were moderates in Iran that said, essentially, just object to it publicly. So they apparently, supposedly, ostensibly, were looking from not only the outside, but also through the lens of the reportage, which is always going to serve those who are in power, the anti-whites. So in the West. So this was some sort of supposedly compromise. I'm inclined to think that there wasn't a compromise, that there wasn't a hardliners saying wipe Israel off the map. I think that is, I have no doubt that there's that sentiment. But like I said, Iran and Iran's leaders know with certainty that if they go to war with Israel, they're going to war with the United States and the UK and Germany and France and Italy and Poland, on and on and on. They know effectively they're going to war with the world if they go to war with Israel. And so they know that death is certain. They know that defeat is certain. So I don't think, I mean, maybe there's a madman here or there, but in the government, but I don't believe it's an insane asylum. They're rational actors, and their behavior, working through proxies to kind of the equivalent, the military equivalent of spitting at a distance at your adversary. So they work through these proxies. What do they have? Like 12 of them. And they work through these proxies to kind of spit at, and yes, I'm not downplaying the death of civilians, which I object to the death of any terrorism and the death of any innocent people. So anything that any of these proxies do to harm innocent people, absolutely repulsive, terrorist, disgusting, and I reject it. But militarily speaking, that's just spitting. That's just a way of saying, I object, I complain. That's not warfare. Okay, that's not the message that we receive in the West. That Iran and the people there are just hungry daily to attack Israel and destroy Israel in America. That is total horseshit. They could hate Israel, they could hate the US all they want, but rational actors know that their days would be over. So the evidence that they're rational is go all the way back. After the wars, the founding of Israel, and it was very clear to the entirety of the world that the United States was willing to make glass parking lots out of anybody who messed with the Israelis. Ever since that moment, you have the evidence that Iran is, and other Arabic countries have rational actors at the top. They might not be the brightest people. They might have very different customs and etc. than us, but all of their actions have been the actions of rational thinkers. And there should be no conversation when anti-whites in our government, on the media, they try to tell you how irrational and bloodthirsty and hungry for war and wipe Israel out and all of that. When they try to tell you this, you should immediately think, I see they're lying because Israelis want them to lie about it. This will make Israelis happy. This will make the Israeli government happy. And not all Israelis either, obviously. but this will make them happy. And so that's why they're saying an obvious lie. How much evidence do you need? I mean, seriously, how much evidence do you need that and this, I will tell you, this attack should be the end of the conversation about whether or not Iran wants war. It's decided. Iran does not want war. It's period. So let's knock it off. All you king worshipers of Israel and Jews, shut your mouths. This is the last piece of evidence. Iran obviously does not want war. It doesn't get any clearer than what they did. Do you understand? They could not they didn't have hardliners and moderates, in my opinion. They had rational actors sit down and say, what is the most aggressive way that we can complain about this murder, about this act of war that Israel just committed, if indeed it was Israel? What is the most aggressive way? Because it just keeps getting worse and worse. What on the scale of complaining, not on the scale of going to war, on the scale of complaining, what's one of the most aggressive things we can do? And they said, well, we could launch attacks from our soil. We've not done that. And so we could do that. And then they sat around and they talked about it. And then they said, well, obviously, we can't target civilians. That would clearly be an act of war. So they didn't target civilians, at least according to all the reportage I'm seeing. They targeted a military base in Israel that indeed got hit by a few missiles. But so they target a military base in Israel. They said, so we won't target their citizens because we don't want war. Absolutely don't want war. Evidence of all of these years since, all the way up to this, into the conversation. Shut your mouth, everyone who worships Jews. And thinks, I guess I should add for clarity, and thinks that this is what Jews want. Because this Jew worshiping is as bad as Jew hating. So people who worship Jews are as bad as those who hate Jews. They're taking the totality of a people in which there are various opinions, animosities, etc., and they're ascribing a single, anthropomorphizing them, ascribing a single desire, a single goal, a single set of views, and then they're saying that's what has to be served. So just to be clear about that. So the Iranians sit back and they say, okay, how can we complain the loudest? So they say, we'll launch a bunch of drones first. So altogether, they sent cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and these pathetic drones, this junk drones. And there were 300 plus of them. What did they launch first? Did they launch drones, or not drones? Did they launch cruise missiles, which would be the hardest to detect and shoot down first, and from the territories nearest to Israel? No, they didn't do that. No, in fact, they telegraphed this. They made it as fucking clear as you could possibly make it. It was so clear that you were able to turn on the news. I'm serious. That you were able to turn on the news and learn that the attack is on its way from Iran. Do you seriously think that's how warfare works? They launched these anemic junk drones first so that the U.S. and Israel and its partners and allies would all have an opportunity to prepare for the incoming. Hours it took for the drones to make their way to Israel. Hours the Iranians gave the Israelis and the U.S. and everybody else. So they did launch from other territories inside Iraq. They launched from Yemen. They also had some of their groups launch from Yemen and Syria. And then these attacks, these drones, these cruise missiles, these ballistic missiles were shot down by the United States. More than 70% at the latest reportage, we'll pull up an article, shot down by the United States itself. Oh, goody, more money for Israel and its safety. More money, more and more money and concern and military might and engendering the hatred of the world and more for Israel. And then Jordan, I think, shot down a couple. And then I think they were even saying, but it was unsure at the time I read it, that Egypt had participated in shooting some down. And then I guess Israel had to shoot just a couple of down as well, which of course they will immediately be reimbursed by the United States. Probably all the money, the weapons will be built back up. So anything they use will immediately be given them by the American taxpayer. And then there'll be some largesse on top of that as well. Why not? Right? So the Iranians decide we'll give them hours to prepare for this. And then when the drones get close, then we'll launch the ballistic missiles and the couple of cruise missiles that they used. And all of them, and remember now, this is all reportage. You're not going to get any reportage coming through that hasn't been sanitized by anti-whites. You're not going to get anything that's not sanitized by anti-whites. Wherever you look in the world. So relative to our well-being, that's why I'm saying anti-whites. So for example, if you look at the Israeli news, they're crafting their news for their audiences. And are you legitimately looking at news just for their audiences, or are those news agencies very aware that there are going to be Western audiences also reading? So all of these content channels out there that we're the only adults in the room. They're all out there and they're like, let us talk about geopolitics, and then we'll go get all of our news from people who absolutely hate Western kind, who are absolutely crafting and sanitizing all of the news for their populations. Like, can you read Russian? So are you, for example, when you read the Russian news, are you reading the news that's actually meant for the Russian population? You know, at least you would be getting what is sanitized for the Russian population, for the empowerment and the maintenance of the power of those in charge of Russia. That's how it is everywhere. Open your eyes, kids. Open your eyes, kids. I know you don't normally have a man of the West in charge and talking to you, but that's the reality. Now, if they have, like if it's an Israeli news source and it also comes in English, guess what, dum-dum? Don't go get that news and then come back to me and say, I got the truth here. This is what's going on. For all we know, and the point I'm getting at, for all we know, there were 50 Iranian drones that were launched. For all we know. And that they flew half speed. And they had loud beacons on them announcing with radio frequency and everything else that they were on their way to a base in Israel. Please shoot us down. For all we know, is Iran going to tell you exactly how many they launched? Of course not. But for all we know, and as far as it matters for us and our lives and making our decisions in life, for all we know, it was 50, 25 anemic drones. For all we know. But of course, we're looking at what's being reported. And even at looking at what's being reported, Iran clearly made every effort to announce and to give time to prepare, which is not what you do for an act of war. All right. And so many of these people who will be talking about this, they love Blitzkrieg. You know, they want to talk about that all the time. But then all of a sudden they see this and it's a great act of war. And they're so happy they want to see Israel get destroyed because they're psychopathic. Iran did everything it could. And just so you know, the difference between ballistic and cruise missile. Ballistic missiles are not sneak up weapons. Cruise missiles are closer to a sneak up and get you weapon because they use a jet engine, they fly low and fast, and they maneuver around objects to get to their destination. And they can be launched, they're smaller, they can be launched very close to their target. But even if they're a long way away, they're still low and fast, moving around obstacles. All right. Ballistic missiles, they use a rocket engine. They go up into the air and to various heights. And for some reason, they don't hit a ceiling. There doesn't seem to be a ceiling up there. They go up and then they fall back down. And I'm sure they have correction as they fall toward their target, and then they hit their target. So what we know, Iran launched anemic drones that flew like Cessnas all the way over Iraq and miles, so much so that goddamn Fox News was there to say there's an attack happening on Israel, and you're like, what's going on? It'll be here in 2.5 hours. Wait, what? I'm a civilian in Virginia. What are you even talking? How the attack is coming in 2 hours? This is not an attack. This is not warfare. This is a country that knows it would be obliterated and is complaining and giving you ample time to shoot down what they've sent. That is what happened. Iran does not want war with Israel, and anybody claiming that they do is wrong at best, is psychopathic, is a worshiper of Jewish people and Israel, and I find those people as contemptible as those who just hate Jews and Jewish people in general. Absolutely. Except it's the worst. What makes them worse, I think, is that they have, the ones who worship Jews have power. They're the CIA agents that were coming on Fox, making me spit my food out in disgust. Interesting. And they're talking about, they're all like, well, we're confused. Why do you think the Iranians didn't have Hezbollah attack from Lebanon? Why didn't they have Hezbollah attack? Because it's not an act of war? Because they're not actually invading Israel? Because they're just saying, stop this. Please stop this. That's what they're doing. That's what Iran is doing. Then that's not to say that Iran doesn't have psychos and that they would conquer whoever they could conquer. I don't know and don't care. What I'm concerned about is my people and the recapture of our destiny and the welfare of our countries. That's what I'm concerned with. So Hezbollah didn't attack because it wasn't an invasion of Israel. All these talking heads on Fox and MSNBC, and they were all sitting around talking about, it's confusing. Do you think their conclusion was that they weren't using Hezbollah from the north because it was going to be a 1-2 punch. I mean, it's always with this mentality. It's always this mentality that Iran just wants nothing better than war with Israel and the United States. And I remember when I was I was actually at a job this particular time where I said to the people, if they really want war with Israel and the United States, wouldn't they just start it? Wouldn't they just launch the war? But what is all this bullshit? Open your eyes. Absolute Tartuses. Open your eyes. If they want war with Israel, they would just attack. They wouldn't be doing all of this little spitting at Israel. There's a little terrorist attack here, a little terrorist attack there. If they wanted war, they would just, what do countries do when they want war? They invade. They attack. They create, and the U.S. has done it sometimes. The countries will create a cause, casus belli, a cause for war, and it could be a false flag. Then they attack. Here's our reason, attack. So, the United States shot down, with our dollars, last I read, more than 70% of the incoming weapons, since there were various types. And Israel immediately took a vote in their government to give the decision for what Israel will do in response to three people: the prime minister and the minister of defense, and then another cabinet member. And now these three are going to decide what Israel will do in response. And I think the Biden White House said, don't do anything. You knock down all of the attacks. A few landed at a military base. And initially, there were no reports, which I was kind of surprised, about injuries, because we're talking about Israel here. So, I mean, how is it that like 45 million weren't killed when these couple of missiles, I don't know which ones made it through, but how is it that 45 million weren't killed in Israel? I'm pretty surprised. Maybe that'll be in the history books the grandchildren end up reading. But nevertheless, these three are now tasked with deciding what Israel will do in response. And guess what? Iran is not going to start war. Iran will only fight a war with the world, because remember, a war with Israel is a war with the U.S., and a war with the U.S. is a war with all of its satellite states. I mean, and really that's how we should talk about it now, because it's all under the control of anti-whiteism. And the United States is the superpower. So it's like the UK, satellite country of the United States. France, satellite country of the United States. Sweden, satellite of the United States. Anybody the United States said, go fight, they would have to fight. So a war with Israel is a war with the United States, is a war with the world. And the only way Iran is going to do that is if it is literally invaded. It would have to be invaded. And guess what? You'll never know. Building 7, you'll never know. You'll never know the truth. You know, if suddenly Iran is launching shit tons of missiles, like all of its stock at Israel, you won't know that there was a sea invasion. You won't know, because they won't tell you. And your content creators that you love to watch, their insights will be coming from the media outside of the U.S., because somehow that's crystal clear and legit. So the thing I wanted to mention here, I mean, I guess aside, I jumped ahead of myself when it came to the CIA. I don't know what you all have witnessed, but every time, as I said, every time there's a CIA agent interviewed who is active CIA or retired CIA, they are the most vociferous endorsers, worshipers of Israel. We end up with this policy of servility to Israel, not allyship. We're not partners. We're not shoulder to shoulder. The United States is on all fours for Israel, and we'll take it from behind, and then we'll attack anything Israel points at. Then they act like, on Fox News, they were acting like this is, I mean, what was the guy's name? Kilmeade. He is a real piece of work, I must say, because he said it was wrong for the United States to tell Israel, the Biden White House, to tell Israel, don't do anything back. You had a victory by shooting down almost every single missile. You've demonstrated your superiority over their weaponry. That's your victory. You don't have to do anything. And Kilme jumps in. How dare they tell Israel that she can't defend herself? Look you, Brian. You have individuals in governance in the United States that know the truth. They know that America, if Israel decides to go to war with Iran tomorrow, America is going to war with Iran tomorrow. They know that. So, of course, they're trying to, the individual politicians who want to keep their seat, who want to keep the money flowing, the sex, the drugs, the popularity, the infamy, the fame, whatever it is, they want to stay in that seat. They're going to go to Israel and they're going to say, please don't. Please don't, because if you do that, then we have to go to war against Iran, and then I am likely to lose my seat, my place at the public trough. Somebody else will get, I'll be replaced. You'll be happy, but I won't be happy. You'll be happy because you have the war you want, but I won't be happy because now I'll be out of the limelight. That's what's going through their minds. So we're working toward the observation that you really need to be empowered with here. But these worshipers of Israel in the CIA, which is entirely, I just, as I said earlier, Israeli territory. And what a surprise that we have the kind of problems we have when the most powerful and the most secret agency in the United States is such a vociferous and psychotic worshiper of Israel and Israelis. You just listen to what they have to say. You just go ahead and look it up. There was a woman on active duty CIA on Fox last night, and I think it was Trace was interviewing her, and he was it Trace? Maybe it was. Anyhow, he was saying, was this a real attack? I mean, how is it an attack when you launch these drones? He was really questioning the narrative of like another Pearl Harbor on Israel. This woman comes on and she could not have been more vociferous and enthusiastic, with just this absolute alacritous energy of love and worship of Israel and Israelis, and the absolute demand to destroy, she said, bomb every important target. America needs to bomb, she said, every important target in Iran to smithereens. This is active CIA. This of the United States. The CIA, Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. And by the way, I have an article about how hardcore they push anti-whiteism in the operations of the CIA. A CIA agent wrote a book about it recently. And every single office he said you go into, there are posters about diversity and embracing people with deviant or maybe I should just different views on what they physically are. All of this in the CIA. The CIA could not be more anti-white. They hate the white race. They couldn't care less about, so you have the anti-whiteism in the CIA, which is this absolute hatred, visceral disgust for Western kind. And simultaneously, they have this abject worshipfulness, this like conservative American-minded worshipfulness of Israel and Israelis. And so she came in and said, absolute. So it made me think about how disgusted I am and how sick and tired I am of hearing of the worship of Jews. I went online and I saw people under threads, and they were writing on different platforms, and they were writing, then these are our conservative brothers and sisters out of their fucking minds. Out of their minds. Talking about how valuable, important Israelis are. Don't give a shit about us. They won't say anything about white people being victimized. Jews, they can't say enough. And these folks, not just Israelis, they worship Jews. And like I said, they anthropomorphize them, and they give them the totality of this people who has, like any people, stark divisions. They give them a single mindset, a single objective, a single, etc. Which is of course a mindset within the body of the Jewish people, an objective within the body of the Jewish people. But these people won't, these white losers, these vague conservative white losers who worship Jews, I find every bit as contemptible as the ones who hate Jews. These people have power. These worshipers of Jews have power. And of course, for anybody out there who thinks that Christianity is the problem, these people, it was not Judeo-Christianity until very recently. They didn't worship Jews until very recently. So this particular percentage or group within the body that is coming out of all the seminaries, the teachings at these seminaries over the last 2 generations or so, 3 generations, pushing this worship of Jews. This is what has caused this. These people have to be shouted down angrily, because their worshipful position, this push, will lead to more and more conflict, more and more loss of treasure, liberty for us, blood of American servicemen, and probably women, but also in-betweens. I don't know. I don't even know. The in-betweeners, what are you going to call them? And a worsening of relations of the U.S. with countries around the world. They will all continue. The sycophantic truckling to Israel. But the question is, how do we get here? Why is this the case? Why are you as disgusted with this worship of Jews as I am? Why is it like this? Well, in the white sympathetic sphere, you'll get from the white negatives the claim that, oh, well, it's because of the Jews. It's because of, well, they have AIPAC. Well, they operate within the government of the United States because of Jews. That's the reason why. That's the reason why there's worship of Jews, fealty to Jews, and this subservience to Israel. The reality is, the worship of Jews is a consequence of the white race, of white people not having a race, not having a people. That's where the worship of Jews comes from. It's like white people are the fans in a stadium, and they're cheering on a team. Fans are individuals who have a favorite team. They're not a team. They're not a people. They're just individuals who all share in common that they have a favorite team. In this case, the favorite team is the Jews. There are white people in that stadium as well that might favor another team on the field. In this case, the other team might be the Arabs. White people are nothing but fans because we don't have a community. We don't have a people. So there isn't any amount of hating Jews. There isn't any amount of documenting Jews with power or anti-white Jews or any of that. There isn't any of that that can remedy the problem of us not having a people. The remedy to people worshiping Jews and serving Israel's needs is for the white race to become a people again. How does this function? Where does the rubber meet the road? White people in the CIA, in the government, elected people, careerists, apparatchiks, bureaucrats, do not say to themselves, when confronted with the question about Israel and Iran in this particular case, they do not ask themselves, what is good for my people? They say to themselves, they ask themselves, what is good for me? And they say that because they are suffering with selfish individualism and because they don't have a people. There is a race called the white race, but there isn't a white people. That's what we have to create. So this misnomer of having a people by just referencing the white race or even referencing the nationalism that of a country we've created. It's all a misunderstanding, a misnomer. Those are misnomers. There isn't a people there. There's just a race. When it comes to nationalism, even ethno-nationalism, it's just people in a country. That's all it is. Individuals in a country. They share a race. They share the kind of food maybe they like in the morning or the flag they like to put out, but they're not a people. What makes a people is individual well-being by way of group well-being. That's what makes a people. And until we create that in the body of Western kind, this will continue. There's no amount of hating Jewish people for the way they were born as Jews that is going to get rid of the people who worship Jews, or is going to end that psychosis of worshiping Jews. There's no amount of slandering Jews. There's no amount. Let me try to make it a little clearer for the real dummies out there. There's no amount of graphs of Jewish names and groups that they run, control, operate, take part in that are responsible for objectionable things. There's no amount of that information that is going to create a people out of the white race. There's no amount of showing the data of what you believe demonstrates how bad Jews are that will make white people stop worshiping them or indifferent to what's happening to our people as we are harmed in service to Israel's needs and wants and defense and etc. Does that finally make sense? I've had so many arguments with people in the white sympathetic sphere over the years. When I ask this question, when I've posed this question to them about why does the United States serve Israel endlessly? Why is it every time something happens in the Middle East or with regard to Israel, you get more unanimity from the parties in the Western countries than you see any other time? You can have the China literally pushing Sear switches, which make handguns fully automatic on the black market for the criminals, anti-whiteism, and fentanyl, which is clearly an act of war on the United States. And the parties are indifferent. They don't care. But something happened with Israel, even threatening words to Israel by another country. And both parties and the CIA and the military and everybody, police officers, they all stand up and they're like, we are absolutely behind. You're not behind Israel at all. They're in front of them to use their bodies as bullet catchers. I like to say that about Marines, bullet catchers. White people say to themselves, when confronted with the question about Israel and the Jews in that part of the world, they say to themselves, what about this is good or bad for me? What is the right team to support that will benefit me? What is the right team to support that will get me bonused, promoted at work? What is the right team to support that will get me attracted, that will get the people I'm attracted to be attracted to me? What is the right team I can support that will benefit me as a selfish individual? That is what white people say to themselves. Don't make my work and these insights, don't make it the thing of history books in China when they say, or where they would say, the white race had one final chance. And here were the people, and they ignored it. He's obviously right. They would end up saying at some highly intellectual academy, university in China, he was obviously right. You could follow the logic, but the white race refused. Don't let that become the history that is left and written about our demise. You're not going to get a people. You're not going to end the worship of Jews, the civility to Jewish people, and the civility, specifically Israel and Israelis. You're not going to end that by slandering Jewish people on the basis of their birth. End of conversation. And you, if you hear everything I just said and you still shake your head no, I'll meet you in the octagon.